Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is the Python Community News, the only show that brings you the non-pippable news and happenings around the Python community. I am one of your hosts, Jay Miller, and with me, as always, is Jon Banafato. Hey, John.
Hey Jay, how you doing?
Good. And if you notice, there's a third camera here. This is our first attempt at doing some interview type stuff, and hopefully it goes well because we've got more planned. But I have a long term friend of mine, former coworker, and I was happy to find out that now she is helping to run all the things happening around Hacktoberfest. Phoebe Quincy from DigitalOcean. Hey, Phoebe.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Give everybody kind of a quick synopsis of what you do at DigitalOcean and how it's tied with Hacktoberfest.
For sure. So I manage open source programs for the marketing developer engagement team at DigitalOcean. And so that involves Hacktoberfest, which is one of our largest marketing programs. And then I also help manage our open source credit program. And this is where we give credits for infrastructure to DigitalOcean to open source projects. So we sponsor over 100 projects, all the way from like you've never heard of them to big name ones like Node, Jenkins, the Open Source Initiative, folks like that. So yeah, I help manage that program. And if anybody's curious about what DigitalOcean does in the open source space, you can go to DigitalOcean/open source and you can learn all about our open source activities. So yeah, we contribute upstream, we contribute downstream, and we run a variety of programs that help support the open source community. And I'm kind of the hub at the center of that wheel.
That's awesome. And Hacktoberfest isn't just about. I'm going to assume that there are 5 people out here that don't know about Hacktoberfest.
Sure.
It's not just about putting websites up onto the web via DigitalOcean. It's a global effort, right?
Yeah, so Hacktoberfest is actually a month-long celebration of open source. So what we do is we help crowdsource contributions to open source projects. And the way that we do that is by incentivizing people to contribute with a reward. And part of that reward is a limited edition Hacktoberfest t-shirt. You can also opt not to do a t-shirt, and you can have a tree planted in your name in the DigitalOcean forest, which is actually a live tree that goes out into the world and gets planted. So yeah, there's lots of little cool things that come along with participating in Hacktoberfest, but really it's a way to give back to the community. We're heavily reliant on open source technologies at DigitalOcean, and this is one way that we can help those folks who are working on the next best technologies and the ones that we rely on improve.
Cool. John, did you have? I know you had a couple of questions. You're like the veteran of Hacktoberfest, right?
I mean, I've been participating in Hacktoberfest for a number of years. Yeah, I think I have all the T-shirts except the first year. So I recall seeing in one of the announcement emails something like this is our 9th year, and I was like, yeah, it can't be right, but it does seem that way.
Yes, it is.
So that is that is super exciting, and I guess with that in mind, I would really love to hear how things have changed with Hacktoberfest over the course of that time. Right, I've certainly had my own experience as a contributor and a maintainer, but getting an idea of the big picture would be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started out very bootstrappy. This was an event that was pulled together by a core team of folks at DigitalOcean that were very focused on the community. And so we started out with about 600 people participating. And at that time, we would hold like a meetup-like event where we would bring people in and we would do pull requests together. And then we started working on adding factors to it to help incentivize and make it better and improve it over the years. And that started, this having events all across the globe. So people participate in Hacktoberfest in a variety of different ways. They can open up a project, like as a maintainer, they can open up a project for people to contribute to. They can contribute to a project. They can organize an event. They can mentor others. And that's kind of the bootstrappy beginnings, is that we had these veteran engineers who would come and they would help kind of folks who were interested in learning how to contribute to open source work together to do pull requests against projects that needed some help. And so we grew that over the course of time. So last year we had about 141,000 people participate, and this year we're anticipating about 150,000. And those are people from 194 different countries who are participating in Hacktoberfest. So it has grown considerably, and we've had growing pains over the years. One of the things that we added into the mix with Hacktoberfest was incentivizing you're getting 4 pull requests done by getting a reward kit. And in that reward kit comes this signature Hacktoberfest t-shirt. And so some folks last year decided they got really excited about it. And unfortunately, what they did was they tried to game the system and, started doing kind of pull requests that really didn't help maintainers. It was like a period or a white space or a hyphen, or they would even create repositories just to contribute that kind of a PR to. So spammy pull requests, spammy repos, it was kind of a nightmare. And so we created a lot of stress and extra work for maintainers. And once we started getting the feedback, we really had to pivot hard. We brought in a bunch of folks from the community, and we created a Hacktoberfest Advisory Council. And they help advise us on issues. So when things like this pop up in the community that maybe, out of good intentions, we did something, but then we didn't realize the impact that it was having, they help us to address those issues and work with the community to make sure that we're doing good, not harm. And so, yeah, we've done a lot to regain trust in the community now. And that was a result of what happened in 2020. We had a lot of people creating a lot of spam, and maintainers were very unhappy. And actually, Jon, you brought up something earlier when we were chatting backstage about how at that time we didn't have a way to have maintainers tell us they wanted to participate. So you could be a maintainer of a project, and all of a sudden you would get pounded with tons of PRs, and you would have no idea what was happening. You'd be like, why is this happening to me right now? I don't have the time to deal with this. So now, as a result, the number one thing that really helps with the rules for Hacktoberfest is that, we are making it so that maintainers can opt in. So all you have to do is add the Hacktoberfest topic to your participating repository, and then that way you are saying, hey, I want to participate, and we anticipate that you will expect PRs. So yeah, this is a little kind of spread over time. But yeah, Hacktoberfest continues to grow. We have many companies that love to be involved as partners. And they help us make Hacktoberfest happen, like Appright and Docker are our founder tier sponsors this year. And we're really happy to have Appright back as a second year founder sponsor. So, and they have a really great, interesting story too. So if anybody's really curious about how Appright got started, head to their Hacktoberfest, Appright/Hacktoberfest page, and you can read their blog post about how they got started with Hacktoberfest.
So
it's a pretty cool story.
Phoebe, I have a question. I'm going to bring the mic in a little close. I have some friends on the inside telling me, hey, you're quiet. You said it's as simple as adding just a tag. I have a project here, and I want you to tell me if I'm doing this right. So
sure.
I have a repo. It's called Render Engine. This is what drives the website for Python Community News and a few others. And you're telling me I just have to go over here where these tags are, and I just need to add Hacktoberfest.
Hacktoberfest topic. Yep.
Oh, okay. So that's it, and then hit save, and I'm done.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm now opted in.
Yes, you are now opted in, and that means that you are telling the community, hey, I've got projects and tasks that I need help with, and I want contributors to contribute to. Some good due diligence on the part of maintainers is to make sure your contributing page is up to date and you've got the correct information, and that you've got your discrete tasks kind of prepared and packaged for people to take on. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Easy enough. Easy day.
And
Yeah,
Jay,
and if anybody's curious about some of the other factors that we utilize to kind of keep spam in check, we definitely label spammy PRs. And if any PRMR, because we also use GitLab as a way to participate in Hacktoberfest, and they call their PRs MRs. Anything that has a label that contains the word spam, it will be treated as spam, and it will not be counted for Hacktoberfest. So it won't go towards your 4 pull requests. And users who have 2 or more PRs that are labeled spam will be permanently disqualified. So PRMRs only count once accepted by a maintainer. So as the maintainer, you will have to accept this PRMR from somebody who's contributing, and you have to label it as Hacktoberfest accepted. So that's the other task that you have as a maintainer participating in Hacktoberfest. And then lastly, we have a way to report bad repos. So if you find a repo that you think is not legit, you can go to the Hacktoberfest website and report them. And then we've definitely reduced the emphasis on the t-shirt. The t-shirt is not why we want people to participate in Hacktoberfest. We really want to focus on quality contributions. Yes, the t-shirt is cool. But we used to lead with that, and now we've really, kind of pushed that to the back. So
Cool.
so Jay, you've got Render Engine officially ready to accept Hacktoberfest PRs now. Who are you looking to really bring into the project, right? With that change.
So, and maybe, and this is actually a good question because it's kind of like two things. One, I want people who are just genuinely interested in, contributing to a Python project. I mean, even though it's been a project for like 4 years, I feel like it's still a very like new project, and maybe for a lot of people it will be. But I'm also looking for people who are interested in maybe getting that first contribution, that first, PR submitted. One of the things, John, I know you and I have talked about this a lot, is the responsibility of project maintainers to almost shepherd first time contributors through that process. In that sometimes someone's not going to know, they're not going to know your contribution style. Some people don't even know what a contributing document is. So when they come in, it's like that balance of like, sure, there's this big rush for people to make more contributions, but there's also like this rush of people who have never done this before. And I feel like that's always the balance in like good PR management and good like project management is like, sure, you're gonna have to, maybe look for spam a little bit more than you usually would, but also coming in and Phoebe, I'm sure you're gonna remember this phrase, but like not assuming malice from
Mhm.
like from the jump, and just being like, oh, someone probably doesn't like they're not a mind reader. They don't know what I want. So if I don't tell them exactly what I'm looking for or exactly the kind of ways that they could contribute to this project, then I have to then do that in just the issue creation process. And a good way that I do that, one, is by tagging things with good first issue. For those that are maybe new to GitHub or new to the Git process, or even just new to, in my case, programming in Python. These tend to not be like heavy code, heavy refactoring problems. They tend to be like, again, those documentation issues that are more than white space and punctuation. And then, I mean, of course, if you want to correct my punctuation too, I will totally give you credit for that because it's me. But yeah, having those good first issues available for people, having all of those documents, like you said, Phoebe, at the ready of saying like, hey, one of the things that we do for the repo for Python Community News is that in our issue template, there's a button that says, I've read the code of conduct and like I'm going to follow it. So like having some of that information available for people, I think really helps. So I'm looking for new people. Jon, do you like what are the projects that you look for when contributing to Hacktoberfest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, and I think that this really boils down to, like I said earlier, I've participated in all but the first one, and so at the beginning, right in 2015, which was when I first learned about Hacktoberfest, I was definitely like, oh, this is super cool, and I want to go out of my way to find right a cool project to contribute to, and right get a T-shirt along the way, right, and I think that's really uh, in line with the goals of the event as a whole, right? It's the T-shirt's cool. I'm wearing one of them right now, but it is certainly not the priority. The things that I looked for, those first couple of years were right. What am I working on? Right. What kind of libraries am I right, specifically interested in contributing to because I use them in my day job or I use them in right building out software for right some of the events that I run. So that's sort of the thing that I gravitated around at the beginning. And I mean, honestly, now I sort of, I go to hacktoberfest.com when registration opens and I hit the button, and it's turned into a much more passive involvement, from a contributor side of things there now. I link my GitHub and GitLab accounts, and at some point during the month, I find out that I've hit the 4 PRs that I needed to to tick that box. And I think that uh, that's probably similar to the experience that a lot of people have when they're getting more and more involved in kind of contributing to open source, uh, as just kind of a matter of course rather than some specific intent.
You have to tell me which Hacktoberfest shirt are you wearing because Jeff is saying that apparently y'all two are twins today. You're matching Hacktoberfest shirts.
Uh, yeah, so this is the 2021 shirt. It just happened to be the first Hacktoberfest shirt I had in reach. But yeah, the only one I don't have anymore because it was such a good shirt that it's just worn out was the 2015 one. And I think you'll find out that uh, right if if your wardrobe takes a similar path as mine has, where it's nothing but Hacktoberfest and conference T-shirts, when you travel in the same groups, you'll end up more often than not having two or more people wearing the same T-shirt in the same room.
It's always a conversation starter. It's a great one.
Phoebe, do you often see many folks that are in kind of that position that John's in, where it started out as like I'm gonna do this thing with like full intention, and then it transforms into more of a I'm now doing this. It's not just every October I do 4 PRs and like my GitHub history graph looks like a sea of white with like one giant block in the middle, like close to the end. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There, a lot of people have really leveled up their careers as a result of Hacktoberfest. Maybe they got started, participating because they were in a boot camp that got involved with a Hacktoberfest meetup, to help folks practice doing, Git, and then that grew them into participating more within their role in their company to open source projects. So yeah, there's definitely a growth curve, and there's a spectrum of folks that participate in Hacktoberfest, from all the way from people who do not have any technical experience, and that's actually something that's a focus for us this year on Hacktoberfest. low to no code, non-code contributions. So one of the things that we discovered last year was that it's hard for people who don't have much technical experience to participate in open source. And they can be working in a tech company that is an open source project itself, but they don't necessarily have the process in place or the know-how to know where to find how to participate. So this year, one of the things that we talk about, and if you go to the Hacktoberfest About page, we have a section that kind of details a little bit more about how you can participate in Hacktoberfest, even if you don't have a lot of coding experience. And here we kind of focus on three kind of key areas. One is writing. And we assume that people might be on a spectrum. Some people will have technical experience, some people will not. Some people will have some, but they may not participate in coding all the time. So they might be great evangelists who can help with social media, so that advocacy part. Or they might be a graphic designer who works within a tech company who maybe didn't realize that they could help contribute their skills and expertise to a project. And on the flip side of that, we're also trying to get maintainers to start thinking about this too. Like, what are the projects that my project needs that I can get help from the community with that aren't related to code? So even things like thinking up, just like we have like a first contributions label, like maybe coming up with a label that's like no code or non-code, where we encourage, that's how you can tag your project as being something that people can actually take on and do a PR against. Right now, it's a little bit of a funky process for people who want to get involved with open source who don't have a lot of technical experience. Finding the right repositories, knowing how to do it. Everybody has a slightly different process. Some people use like a work activity log to kind of track that. Some people actually do have PRs. But that's one of the things that we want to focus on. And some of our partners are sharing through their events, like how to do this. We also have a video that's going to be up on the Hacktoberfest website soon. That's how to do your first pull request. That will teach you how you can do a very simple, easy pull request and also an MR. But yeah, so the focus of trying to be more inclusive, because open source is going to need all of us to contribute and hear all the voices, right? Like there's so many people that don't get to participate in Hacktoberfest or in open source in general because they might not have as much technical experience. So we wanted to try and open that up a bit more this year.
I found a good resource just as our team was preparing for this. Good first issues, goodfirstissues.com.
Yes.
And basically, it's looking for all the issues on GitHub. I've just selected Python, and then I added Hacktoberfest in documentation, and then you have things like test this on Windows. Just add more documentation. Which I'm wondering if your project isn't documented, is adding more documentation really a good first issue? But like optimizing the README, I know that my whole job is the benefit of not every software engineer wants to get up on stage and talk, nor do they want to write that blog post or update that README page and make it, grammatically correct, which is a problem that even I have with. So, again, like, are these types of contributions are encouraged, which is great for me, because one of the questions that I had just in this campaign of like, I want to get as many like repo owners involved is, I know GitHub has a new feature called like the community pulse, which is, in order for it to be labeled like a healthy project, it needs to have a code of conduct. It needs to have, a README. It needs to have a license. It needs like these things. Are suggesting that people add these, are these things that people could get credit for in Hacktoberfest, even just saying like, hey, here's a template for like an MIT license if that's what you're looking for. If not, perhaps make a suggestion and we can add that.
Yeah, for Hacktoberfest, we still only have the ability to track PRs and MRs, and that's something that we are we really took note of last year, and we tried to tackle this year. We just didn't have the resources available to try to change our enablement of how we process the challenge part of Hacktoberfest. But it's something that we want to work on, moving forward, is a way that we can accept other kinds of contributions than just PRs and MRs.
Very cool.
I had a couple of questions based on something you said a moment ago. The first one is, right, somebody like me who right, I'm gonna end up, right, I've already registered. I'm gonna end up with my T-shirt, right, just as a matter of doing my normal day-to-day job. But so when I think about directly contributing, I'm really kind of the mindset of, right, how do I help others get more involved, right? And I'm curious if you have any advice for, right, folks who are already accustomed to this. How do we essentially become levers to help more and more people contribute?
Absolutely. So that is a fantastic question. The best way that you can help is by mentoring others. And so there are a couple different avenues that you can take to mentor. One is by holding your own Hacktoberfest event. And we have resources available on the Hacktoberfest website for how you can set up and run your event, and then get it listed on the Hacktoberfest website. And I do want to call this out since you're on there. If you scroll down, you can see the list of events that we've already got up there. You can load more events, and there is a little bit of a way you can sort them. But if you keep scrolling down and you go to event organizers, there's a kit that you can download, and this has a lot of resources in it. It's a zip file that contains images that you can use, a slide deck if you want to do a presentation, things like that. And then that third or fourth item down in that list there, submit the Hacktoberfest new event request form. If you mouse over new event request form, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything on the website. I got a ticket in for that, but it pops open this form, and this is where you can submit your event, and we'll list it on the Hacktoberfest website. So events are one way that you can help mentor others. You can share your thoughts through social media for sure. Twitter is a huge space where people are, sharing their content. Dev.to is a great place if you want to write something up about your experience with Hacktoberfest and the things that you find valuable. Yeah, just, you can join the Hacktoberfest Discord community, and that's a great place to offer help. There's tons of folks in there who are always looking for a little bit of guidance, and many channels you can join in that space. And so, yeah, I think, for folks who are a little bit more advanced, there are also more kind of advanced projects that you can take on if you want to challenge yourself as well. This year, for example, Docker is one of our premium partners, and they are going to be giving people an opportunity to create extensions. So if you're not familiar with Docker extensions, just Google that. But it's kind of like you would be creating your own repository rather than just doing a contribution to a repository. And you would be creating something that would be usable on a Docker extension on desktop. So from my limited understanding, but we'll have more on that. And we're holding 4 live stream events this month from DigitalOcean, and those will be listed on the Hacktoberfest website. And we'll be having folks from Docker and many other companies come on and talk about ways that you can participate. But in general, I think for folks who are more practiced at this, the best way that you can help is to find someone that doesn't know, and help them, talk to them, bring them up with you, show them how to do things. Take some time to set aside a moment to say, hey, let's do a pull request together. I just want to show you how to do it. If we all just took one person in the community and pulled them with us and said, here, come here, I want to show you how to do this, we'll have so many more people.
So Oh,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Jay.
John. Well,
Um,
I was going to ask how do organizers, I mean, is that the same way that they keep that momentum going? Is we get some folks, and I think that's, I mean, to me, like, that's the ultimate question, is like, again, that fixing that empty contributor graph problem of like, don't just wait for October, get plugged in. Like, I would love to hear, some of the success stories from the community, which people in the community let us know these success stories, like, of, jumping in on a project for Hacktoberfest to get your t-shirt, and like fast forward 2 3 years later, now you're a maintainer of that project, or you're one of the maintainers of that project. um, do you know of any, like, kind of big success stories of either projects that have just maybe gotten second life due to Hacktoberfest, or maybe people who got their start, contributing to Hacktoberfest?
Yes. So actually, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but AppRight, who's one of our sponsors, started out as an open source project, and their company and their product is open source. And they joined in participating in Hacktoberfest, and they got over 200 contributions that helped kind of spur the growth of their product enough that it started them on their journey to becoming a profitable company. Um, and so one of the ways that they kind of give back is by participating in Hacktoberfest, and they're kind of a poster child in a way of what can happen. So if you're a little contributor and you've got a little project, maybe it's like a side project, and then maybe you start pulling in other people to start contributing to this project, then you open it up and you have maybe a global community that's helping to contribute. Actually, Jay and I used to both work for Elastic, and that is how Elastic got started. It was a cookbook recipe database and that our founder started for his wife, who was in a culinary program, and he developed the search algorithm. And so yeah, like these things can grow and become the next big thing. Um, Another really great story, if you go to if you go to the DigitalOcean/open source, and then within that website is a Hacktoberfest page, we have a story from SD who is a developer who started participating in Hacktoberfest, I think, a couple of years ago. And she has blogged about her experience participating and how it's kind of changed her experience with development and open source. And I think those are the kinds of stories that we'd love to hear more about. So if you register for Hacktoberfest, you will be opted into our emails. You can always opt out. But if you opt in, you will get a link to where you can share your Hacktoberfest story. And actually, I can grab the link to that right now, and I'll share it in the chat. So yeah, we want to hear more of these stories, but I just have a few to share today.
No, I love that. While you're getting that, I mean, this is one of the things I love about the show that John and I have put together here, is that I've always looked at John as like kind of that seasonal, like, not seasonal, I guess seasoned developer, not seasonal, but seasoned developer, conference organizer, has been doing this for a while. And for me, I've only been active, as a profession for, the last couple of years. Um, I tell people I submitted my first open source contribution last year. And technically, I didn't submit it because CI/CD had a bug. It was auto failing. Someone had to come in, do all the stuff for me, and basically take my PR, put it under their name, and then merge it. So it was like I did the work. They gave me credit, but like also, and then since then, I've gotten really invested in, like, okay, now I have people submitting PRs to my projects. I'm submitting PRs to other people's projects. Like, it really is addictive, and that's where, like John mentioned, like the four just kind of happen. I feel like it is that way, and honestly, I've made extensions for the sole purpose of like contributing to open source projects, and like, hey, I like this project, it doesn't have a code of conduct, I would really like for it to have a code of conduct. I made a tool for myself to make code of conducts faster so that I could submit them as like a starting point for projects. And like when you're, and then now that's an open source project that does have a code of conduct, might I add. But like just the ability to say like, oh, doing this one little thing that took me 5-10 minutes really helped that other person, and it gave me so much more confidence, even as someone who is a professional in the space. It gave me confidence to be like, at least in terms of adding code of conducts to people's sites, like I know what I'm doing. So like, sure, let me just do that some more, and then going in and adding testing and kind of expanding my knowledge as it grows. I would love to and Phoebe has the link here. I'm gonna paste that in the chats, but I would love to just hear the testimonies of people that like I started out with a README update, and then like now I'm like actually well, I don't want to say actually like it's a bad like what you were doing didn't count, but like now you're contributing code to the main project, because I've always been fascinated with people that, I mean, I know people who like their first open source contribution was on like C Python, and that just really confuses me on like how you started there and not like you missed a comma in your readme. But I'm gonna put that link up. There's a link in the chat. I put it in the YouTube chat. Actually, let me see if I can fix that really quick in case some people are watching on Twitch as well. I'll put it in that chat as well. If you have a story, please go share that. I think people underestimate the value of, oh hey, someone very much in a similar situation that I was in was able to do it. Maybe I'll give it a shot.
I can kind of share my story. So back when I first started in tech, my first job in tech was being an admissions advisor for a tech school at Galvanize. And I helped fill the seats in 6-month long immersive web development camps. And our campus evangelist would set up events on the campus that would help, students sometimes. So they set up this Hacktoberfest event. So I got to go to a Hacktoberfest event as a participant. So I learned how to make my first pull request. And then later on, I became the evangelist for the campus, and I helped set up events for Hacktoberfest. And then later on, after I moved on from Elastic over to DigitalOcean, here I am managing Hacktoberfest. And I did, I have contributed, I have tried every year to do my 4 PRs, but I've never completed them all. And this year, gosh, diddly darn it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get my 4 PRs done. And I started just kind of warming up. Cloud Haiku is one of our repos that we run at DigitalOcean that we put in as a good first contributions repository. And basically you can write a little haiku and contribute it. It goes onto this website. And I am now volunteering to help maintain that project. So the circle is complete.
What is this website? I need to have this website.
It's let me tell you, it's I think it's just if you just type in Cloud Haiku repo, you probably will find the GitHub, and then in the README is the link to the website where the haikus are published. And we're also featuring some of those haikus in our emails this year. So if you want your email sent out to a gazillion people, if you want your haiku featured, drop your haiku in there.
Oh, this is awesome. This is the project. Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun one. We actually use this repo as our example repo in our how to do your first PR video. So we actually we'll have a video up on the website here shortly that it's actually it may already be on YouTube, on the DigitalOcean YouTube, but it's actually I can go look and see if we can grab that. But we use this repo, and so you can get walked through your first PR utilizing this repository. So it'd be fun to
That
do
is
that.
very cool. And I guess that is a kind of another question of like, I know that there are repos like Awesome Lists and um I mean, John and I have a repo that is the sole purpose of like adding issues for the show, adding topics for the shows each week. Uh, I I would hope that those are also. I mean, as long as they're valid contributions, I hope those are also encouraged for to be included in those types of contributions. Obviously, if you just do an issue, that won't count. But if you do like a PR to set up an issue form or an issue template to maybe make more sense of a project, I think those little things should definitely count because it improves the overall experience of all of the people that are going to come behind you and file issues or submit PR templates. Those are amazing underused tool that I think would help a lot of people, but just a lot of repos don't have them. So, I mean, you submitting one like that, I think that would totally count.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up, sort of like this little thing that you do today could have this long-term lasting impact. That's one of the things that we talk about in our values, is that, yes, you're doing this small, sort of short-term action, or it could be fairly extensive depending on what the contribution is. But, ultimately, this is building a better future for open source, and it could have long-term lasting effects. If anybody has ever seen that comic of the person who is like, they're like one maintainer of a tiny little project that all these like monolithic like industries are building off of, and he's someplace in Idaho. Yeah, that
So,
is what we want to try and help that person.
so Phoebe, we might know that person. Seth Larson, who is the maintainer for URL-lib, or at least one of the primary maintainers. Uh, I think he lives in like Minnesota. I don't want to blow up his spot and all that stuff and like tell everybody where he's at, but definitely one of those situations of like really really important project, probably the one of the most important projects in Python. Very very small team of dedicated people, and I know that they've seen a big boom in just the number of people contributing and sponsoring. And I think that there's a lot of value that comes from people being ready to just say, hey, let's make sure that this doesn't disappear. Because when it does, that's never fun. John, you sent me the you sent me the hold on, I'll
That's
put it up on
the
the screen.
that's the one. Yeah, it's an XKCD cartoon that is, I think, pops up in any conversation about open source
Open source.
sustainability
Yeah,
because
this is like
it's far too true.
Nebraska. It wasn't Idaho.
So Seth,
I'm
if you're
sure there
watching
is an
this, I need you to
equivalent,
move.
project maintained by somebody in Idaho.
Yep.
So
That,
I wanted to ask sort of a bit of a non sequitur here, because it relates to something that Jay and I were talking about a few weeks back on the show, in which he grilled me for 40-ish minutes about open source licenses. So this is me paying that forward. You mentioned encouraging more non-code contributions this year, which I think is super important. Uh, especially as right projects start out where it's someone with a particular technical obstacle a lot of the time, and then a project grows and grows from that and eventually needs documentation and design and many things that are not code. But right, open source licenses apply to the code, right? So why do people care about, right? Why am I going to make an open source documentation contribution?
So that is also a really great question. Why do you need to document your open source? Like, why do you need to document your open source licensing, or why do you need an open source license?
More along the lines of right. The open source licenses apply to code, right? It's generally the limitation of the scope there. So what would make me as someone who's doing right maybe artwork or documentation that isn't that isn't source code, right? Why would I want to contribute to an open source project?
Oh, excellent. So, like I mentioned before, I think that, there, even within the tech industry, there are tons of people that work for tech companies that are in this community. They just don't necessarily realize it. And they don't necessarily realize that they have skills and expertise that can be applied to open source projects. And I see it more as kind of like the growth curve of open source. We are moving into an era where open source is so much a part of everyday business that it's intermarried, and there really isn't a way. It's still in this nonprofit cost model, right? Like, we do have examples of companies like Elastic where they started out as an open source project, and then they went to like a limited license, and they sell their product on a subscription service. And there are many open source projects that are not for profit. And so that question of how do we manage this process where we've got essentially all these 501(c)s out there that need our help? Well, to me, the answer is bringing in, raising the issue. I mean, that's why I wanted to focus on this year for Hacktoberfest, is that I feel like I'm seeing this gap in the open source community where we've got projects out there that they need this help, but they don't really know how to ask for it or don't have the right processes in place. And so we're kind of in the baby step territory where it's like, okay, hey, everybody, this is an issue we know about. We want to talk about it. Now is the time let's take Hacktoberfest this month to start kind of working towards improving it for people. But why would they want to get involved in this? Because it's ultimately going to improve the projects that their company utilizes, and ultimately their customers' experience, and also their daily life. I mean, I don't know about you, but on the daily, I use a gazillion open source projects. A lot of people don't know that they're using open source when they're using projects. Like, I mean, gosh, if we started to try and list them out, I think it'd be kind of crazy. But
I get paid to advocate for one with VS Code, so and that is an open source project.
VS Code, perfect example, right? Something we use daily, all the time, and we take for granted. And so, yeah, having this sort of a two-prong approach where we're trying to educate maintainers, hey, you have this opportunity to get contributions that are not code related, and we're simultaneously trying to educate non-tech community, or not non-tech community, but non-technical folks in the tech community. Hey, you can still participate in this. I feel like it's going to be a growing process that we do over the years, but ultimately it's the same reason why we're all participating in open source. It's because we know that we're helping other people. That's kind of the bottom line.
So we've got about 10 minutes left in the stream, and I want to make sure folks that are listening, if you have a question for either Jon or myself or for Phoebe. This is a good time. Phoebe, this is like what Phoebe does. Her focus is making sure Hacktoberfest is like great and phenomenal. So she's definitely the person to ask questions. But I wanted to kind of follow up on that question as well, as I think for historically excluded, groups, you're not often taught I mean, actually, most people who go to college don't get taught the process of like, hey, here's how you submit a PR through GitHub, that are or through GitLab or whatever Git service. It's it's often one of those things. I remember like being in the military and you take like all of these courses on like theory and how things work, and then you get into your first role and they're like, oh, you're like, what's my job? I've been studying how to implement configurations on routers, and they're like, tip these cables, and you're like, oh. So to me, like, even those contributions that are not actual protected by the open source license, maybe they're a cool logo, maybe they're a readme update or some documentation. If anything, that gives you practice in doing the thing that maybe you're going to need to do once you get into that first developer job. Because I can tell you now, like, interviewing someone fresh out of college, a good question that they probably get asked a lot is, how familiar are you with Git? And if the answer is, oh, that's not really something that we talked about in school, or that's something that came up once or twice, versus, oh, I'm familiar with Git because I had to use it for during the Hacktoberfest event. One, you're going to get bonus points because you know what Hacktoberfest is, which tells me that you're already tuned into the community. But like, also, that gives you such a step ahead from folks who, you know, whether they have a piece of paper or not, whether they've gone through 4 years of this or not, they're missing a critical piece in development that they're going to use for the majority of their career, if not for the entirety of their career.
And I want to build on that a bit because you used this example as someone, right, getting into their development job, and I think that a big part of what you said, Phoebe, about getting more contributions that aren't just like straight source code this year really points to is that might not be the path you take, right? You may continue contributing in ways that aren't source code, and that's going to be hugely valuable. Because, right, if the be all and end all is, okay, now I'm going to make the code contribution, right, we've essentially replaced a gap in, right, skill set and desire to contribute to things that aren't just code, with someone who can and wants to do those things, and then immediately said, okay, you've graduated out of that. Right. So I think long term we're gonna see a lot more investment in, right, building out those paths for people to continue contributing to these projects, and to continue building the community in a way that isn't necessarily about the code.
And maybe the last piece on that is also communities. I know, Jon, we started the show around an interesting time where, like, you know, the idea of community building is still a growing thing, and we see more and more Discord communities being put together, and we see more things like that. I love the addition of events to Hacktoberfest because, like, you said that and that wasn't even like in my mind, and you're like, oh wait, what, we can do an event where we bring people in that want to contribute, and we, like, whether we're looking at like something that Python Community News is doing, or something that I'm like a code project that I'm working on, or a code project that Jon's working on, or maybe we just scoured one of the Git hubs out there, GitHub, GitLab, whatever, and just look for projects and say like, hey, this would be a great project. To me, that's such it's so obvious. I don't know why I didn't think about it. And then when you said it, I was like, this is why we need people doing that thing, because there are plenty of obvious things out there that people have just not thought about or they have not gotten to. And it just takes someone making a suggestion or someone saying, hey, I've already done the work. Have you thought about this? Or maybe you did think about this, but you didn't know how to do it, but I know how to do it. And then that person does it and shows them, and then that opens up new opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where I was going with the, it doesn't have to be a heavy lift. Like you could literally, be having one of those water cooler conversations with somebody and you find out that they're kind of interested, but they're intimidated, like they don't know how to contribute. And you could say, well, let's just spend an hour together and hang out and I'll show you what I know. Um, that could be that person's first step towards a career. You never know. But it could also just be an opportunity for them to be more knowledgeable about open source and help raise the priority of it in their work. Like, hey, there's this community of people that's doing this awesome work and we need to help support them, and finding other ways to help support.
Well, I think we're about at time. We did the thing where we jumped right into the topics and we didn't tell people how they can actually sign up for Hacktoberfest. So I'm gonna say, Phoebe, how do people sign up for Hacktoberfest?
Cool. Jay, do you want to go to the homepage of the Hacktoberfest website?
I'm there.
Okay. Do you see that button, registration? Yes. Click on that.
It might yell at me because I'm already here. Let me log out. There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay. So yes, here you can either create an account with GitHub if you have a GitHub handle, or GitLab. If you don't already have one of these accounts, you can go to either GitLab or GitHub and create an account. And here you can see Jay's awesome profile.
Yeah, I wish it were this easy. There was another page in there. Luckily, there wasn't a lot.
I know.
I'm already signed up.
I know. All three of us, I think, are already signed up, so we don't have a great example of the questions that you have to go through. But if you join our global kickoff event, which is October 4th, and this is listed on the Hacktoberfest website. We don't have, I think there's a registration link in there somewhere. But you can join that. It's October 4th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And we will take you through how to register. We will take you through how to do your first PR, and we'll have lots of fun content. We're also going to do a Kahoot and give away some swag. So we would love for you to join us at our kickoff event. We also have an APAC region, Asia Pacific edition of that kickoff. So if you are not currently in the US time zone, you're more kind of India, Australia, that kind of area, then you can join that call and it'll be very similar content.
And time zones are super, super hard. And this is a question that I've gotten, and I'm sure it's a question that I've asked too. When do I have to submit my pull requests, my merge requests, in order for them to count?
Okay. So starting October 1st is when you can start to do your pull requests. There is, I think, it might be a 7 to 14 day. I have to refresh my memory on that one. Clearly, but a 7 to 14 or 7 to 10 day waiting period where your pull request essentially matures. That's giving the maintainer time to accept and label your pull request. And then your ability to contribute ends October 31st. And as soon as you have completed your four pull requests, you will be eligible to win a reward kit, and the first 40,000 people who contribute will get a reward kit.
And those dates, are those UTC or anywhere on Earth, or what is
Yeah, no, there is a UTC. This is terrible. This is where I wish I had Matt Cowley with me because he's very dialed on these things. Matt Cowley is our technical engineering lead for Hacktoberfest, and he's a delightful person. And so he would know, but I wish I could tell you, but I think it's probably on the participation page. If you look under the rules of participation.
Yeah, I'm just trying to preempt that. Oh, I opened my pull request 4 hours too early. And
oh, right. Yeah. So if you actually like right now, I did a pull request and I can actually, it doesn't do anything because registration is open, but the ability to have your PRs tracked doesn't begin. There you go.
New time zone.
There. Yeah. I knew it was there. So yeah, it doesn't get tracked until October 1st.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode. Phoebe, thank you so much for being our guest. And thank you so much for bringing all your knowledge on Hacktoberfest. Like I said, this is my first one. I'm going for a shirt. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure that I have enough friends that are going to be like, hey, here's a project I need you to work on for me. So maybe we'll figure it out.
Well, I really appreciate both of you having me on the show. It's been awesome fun. I'm so glad we got to do this together. And I just want to give one last shout out that we've got some really cool digital badges this year, courtesy of HoloPin, that are lots of fun. And if you just register, you'll start collecting those badges right away. So everybody head to the registration page and get yourself registered because we're going to have a whole lot of fun this month.
Awesome. Well, Jon, anything else?
Again, thank you so much for telling our community about Hacktoberfest. I'm looking forward to it, as I always do. So I'm sure it's going to be a great event.
Well, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. There won't be an episode this Friday. This is the episode for this week. We wanted to make sure that we gave all the attention to it so that when October rolls around, which I think is on Saturday, you have all the information that you need to jump in and start getting connected. But we'll be back next week again with some more news in around the Python community space. But until next time, for Phoebe, I'm Jay Miller.
Jon Banafato.
And this has been the Python Community News. Bye, everybody.